and welcome to the latest episode of the Terrace Podcast. I am your host, Craig Fowler, back once again with another review of the Scottish Premiership weekend, as all 6 fixtures managed to survive Storm Bert, despite the fact that I think there was only 3 the rest of the entire weekend through the SPFL, which also managed to do that. So, well done to Premiership groundsmen and also clubs and officials for being flexible enough for moving some of the kickoffs to later in the day as temperatures rose, roads were cleared, pitches were cleared, and they managed to get all 6 encounters on. So to look back at what occurred across those 6 matches, it is a very happy Gary Cocker. Gary, how's it going?
It's going very well, Craig. Thank you very much. And I think a special shout out should go to the pitch at Dens for surviving, because I don't think anyone had that on their book when they saw Storm, weekend, football fixtures, postponement, all in the same sentence. So, kudos to us for doing the bare minimum that you should expect for a Premiership club.
Yeah, it was even quite surprising that you tweeted out you shared a photo of the pitch from earlier on Saturday in our group chat, and while, for instance, St Mirren's pitch was all white with the snow that had fallen there, it didn't seem like there'd been much snow, or as much so, in Dundee, because when you sent that picture out, and that was kind of early, it was kind of mid to late morning, it looked fine.
I had no snow whatsoever at the weekend, just a lot of rain, which was concerning enough for the football, really. But no, maybe Eric Drysdale was right. Maybe there is a microclimate situated entirely around the Dens Park pitch, a little bit like Principal Skinner's kitchen.
Yes. Always appreciate that reference. And Gary, let's begin with the game at Dens, why don't we? With Hibs taking an early lead through Nicky Cadden goal. Nicely worked goal involving Elie Youan and Jordan Obita, who crossed in for Cadden to score. But unfortunately, Obita blotted his copybook a short time after a poor touch near the halfway line, and then committed the cardinal sin that a lot of players should not do in that instance. And in his desperation to try and get the ball back, he went in, lunged in, and was it Josh Mulligan he caught?
It was Mo Silla.
Sorry, it was. Yeah, the guys look quite similar. It was Mo Silla that he lunged in on, caught him in the ankle, a clear red card, and Hibs were reduced to 10 men. And then Dundee just filled their boots after that point. Goals from Jordan McGee, an own goal from Nectar Triantis. Incredibly, not the biggest gaff a Hibs player would make that half, as Joseph Burchich then got caught dallying on the ball. For the second time this season, he's been caught by an opposing attacker. We're only in November, and that led to a goal with Seb Palmer Holden scoring, and then Dundee got their 4th late on through Curtis Main. Gary, I've got individual stuff to talk about, but just as a general overview of the match, I mean, it's obvious that the red card made a huge difference in things, but you have to still be impressed by how quickly Dundee responded to that, because we've all seen our teams in the Scottish top flight before many times across the years, playing against 10 men and not having a fucking clue what to do with them.
Yeah, and I've been weighing up exactly how to approach this game ever since I knew that it was going to be me talking about it, because the difficulty is how much credit do I give Dundee versus how much do I lay into Hibs, because Hibs fell apart. They're the least resilient team that I've maybe not ever seen at Dens, because there's a lot of Dundee teams that I've seen that are not that resilient. But no, Hibs it was strange, because the minute that Obita went off, I thought we were winning this. And I had no doubt whatsoever in my mind. And that's despite the fact that Dundee, I think, would beat a 10-men Hearts earlier on this season. But other than that, I cannot think of us ever beating 10 men. I can think of us dropping points from a winning position against 10 men. But we tend not to cope, because it's not always that easy, because 10 men can sit back and they can be quite well drilled and quite well focused, even if it is for 75, 80 minutes, as it was in this case. But essentially, once Obita went off, as you say, Hibs had a very good start. They scored before we even touched the ball. But after Obita got his marching orders, there just was no prospect of them getting anything from the game, which has to be pretty concerning. And for me, I think that the thing that really stuck out to me watching Hibs was that it was obvious within 2 or 3 minutes that Josh Mulligan had the run of that flank with Obita going off. And they did nothing whatsoever to rearrange, to reorganise, to try and sort that out. And it took a good, 25, 30 minutes before David Gray bothered trying to change things up with a double substitution, taking off the Caddens. He must have decided there was something to do with their family that meant that that Hibs were in the predicament they were in. But no, it was a joyous game to watch as a Dundee fan. It was Tony Docherty's 62nd game in charge, and that's now Curtis Main's 4th goal was his 100th goal as a Dundee manager. 104, 103 against. You're always guaranteed goals when it comes to Dundee Football Club. But I don't think, as much as there's a lot of good stuff to talk about with Dundee, I think that having that McGee-Silla double pivot is perhaps, and again, it's 10-man Hibs, so I'm not going to draw too many lessons from it, but maybe that is one way that we can protect that porous backline, because it's still pretty poor. Obviously, Mulligan and Robertson on the flanks worked quite well, and that meant that we didn't have to play McGee over on the right. It meant that he could be in the middle, keeping things a little bit more solid. 3 academy graduates were the ones in the mix for player of the match, including actually 2 who were born on the same day in the same hospital, which must be the only time surely that's happened in Scottish football. Finlay Robertson and Josh Mulligan. They were born on the same day in Nine Wells. There's a wee fact that will surely get used for as long as they're both at Dundee. And then obviously just scoring 4 goals and making sure that we really made sure of the points and did so in a very professional manner in the second half, because it would be quite easy once you're a couple of goals up, and we had it against Hearts as well, where you're a couple of goals up against 10 men, but your mentality begins to go.
Gary, you've said this twice now. Hearts did not have 10 men in that game.
You did?
No, we didn't. I thought it was weird when you first said it, and I've checked it. We did not have 10 men. Gerard Taylor was playing with a man down that game, but he did not get sent off.
No, he should have been sent off. But then if he had been sent off, he would not have scored the own goal. Never mind then. I therefore cannot think of a single time that we've won a game against 10 men, which makes it even worse. Which makes it even worse for Hibs. But no, I think we should probably come on to Hibs now, because as much as me going, yay, Dundee won a game of football, is great for me, it's not great for the listener, because I think the listener wants to hear all about Josef Bursic. And in fact, Elie Youan for what apparently was his disgraceful decision to try and keep warm in sub-zero temperatures.
Well, actually, let's go. I mean, I don't know what else is there to say about Bursic. He's shit. Like, he's terrible. Not good, and he's not good at, like, he has made some really good saves this season. So you can see where the talent is situated in his footballing DNA. But he's terrible at crosses. His decision making is quite poor. And like I said, that is the second time this season he has basically been. This time it wasn't a full tackle into the back of net. He was tackled and then Palmer Holden scored. The one at Parkhead was just a tackle in the back of the net, but it's him getting a pass back and just being unable to sense the danger around him, and not just immediately going, right, okay, I need to get rid of this. I can hear footsteps coming. This ball should not have been played to me. Let me get rid of it and then shout at the defender. Dallying on the ball, giving it away, and then shouting on your defenders is just no. Like, it wasn't that bad a pass. It was a bad one. Like, he should have been played to him, but just immediately launch it. Just get rid of it. Stick out for a throw. Go nuts. Like, I can't remember which defender it was that actually gave it to him, but go nuts and say, what the hell are you doing that for? Like, and then you go again.
But I mean, each of the Dundee goals, if you take each of them in turn, there's so many things that point to the malaise at Hibs. So the first goal was a carbon copy of the winner against Kilmarnock, just with Jordan McGee playing the Ziad Larkesh role of, so Finlay Robertson just sort of burst down the left, cut it back, and it was sort of sliced across goal. And that's obviously a tactic Dundee deploy, and Hibs just were not wise to it, and no one was even bothering trying to pick up McGee. The second goal was, Triantis just not really paying attention from a corner and turning away from it. Third goal we've already covered, and then the fourth goal was Rocky Bashir, and obviously the game's gone by that point. I mean, it's the 93rd, 94th minute, but Rocky Bashiri just sort of dawdling on the ball and getting robbed by Lyle Cameron, who just plays Curtis Main through for the easiest goal he'll score in his life. And watching it, I just felt Hibs have the stench about them. We've spoken about the stench for other teams, but there is no redeeming quality or feature that I could spot as a Dundee fan. There was no single player that I looked at and thought, it'd be handy to have you in the team. The midfield is just non-functioning and give away cheap fouls time after time. It's not really fair to talk about the attack, given that they went down to 10 men so quickly that the attack basically just didn't function for 80 odd minutes of the game. The defence, everything just from Bursic forward just is clearly a ball of nerves and doesn't work. Mm-hmm. And I think Hibs have only scored more than one goal in 3 games this season, which means that they're basically relying on their defence sort of digging them out of a hole. Or not even digging them out of the hole, keeping them out of a hole in the first place. And they just keep falling into holes. They're a team that love holes.
Yeah, I've seen people say, like, I feel sorry for David Gray, he's getting let down by this pack of jokers all the time. But it's like, as I always say, if you're going to blame the players for a bad run and always make mistakes, then what's the point in a manager? Like, a manager, good managers are there to help eliminate players from making basic errors. And if they're making basic errors all the time, then it just has to be the manager that gets blamed for it ultimately. Because what else are you going to do? What else can you do? Like, go in and shout at them all and say that, stop being so shit. Like, I think David Gray's probably tried that already.
And I think the other thing is that and this is why, everyone's seen the stuff, sort of sack the board and the feelings towards the Hibs hierarchy as well. But if you look at their summer, I'm not saying that Mitov would have chosen them over Aberdeen, but everyone knew that Dimitar Mitov could be bought for a couple of $100,000, and Hibs didn't bother going for him. They got a guy in on loan from Club Brugge, who has played at an ever-diminishing level of football ever since he was in the England under-19s, or wherever it was that he came through. Their entire defence just looks like a Ross County defence, and that's the easy sort of, not really, it's the easy critique to make, and it's because Malcolm Mackay was at Ross County, but there's not really...
Probably a bit harsh because Akil Wright and Kasper Lopata have looked good this season.
Yeah. If only Malcolm Mackay was still at Ross County.
A St Johnstone defence, but St Johnstone defence prior to this weekend, which we'll get into later on.
Yeah, pre-Bozo. A pre-Bozo St Johnstone defence. But no, there's just, the signings haven't been good. They spent several weeks seemingly just focused on trying to sign Luke McCowan, and that didn't come off for them either, instead of actually trying to sign other players and fix other parts of their team. So I don't know. David McGray, who's he? David Gray will be gone after the Aberdeen game. I've got no doubt about it. And whoever comes in, okay, will have to be waiting a good couple of months before the transfer window to fix it, and it's going to take a lot of money.
Before we move on, I'm surprised you've talked as much about Hibs as you have, because I was going to ask you about some individual Dundee players. So,
absolutely,
you mentioned some of them already. In fact, I think you mentioned 3 of them already, but there's 4 that I want to ask you about. Start with Josh Mulligan. Excellent performance on the right of midfield. What is... Oh yeah, we never talked about Youan. We'll circle back to that at the end. So Mulligan on the right of the 3 at the back system, right wing back.
Mm-hmm.
So what is his best position? And is that, and the fact that is a question, that is really what's holding him back, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a little bit similar to the Craig Whiting conundrum that we had about a decade or so ago, where he wasn't quite a left winger, he wasn't quite an out-and-out striker, he wasn't quite a number 10, so we just sort of dotted him about the place. And I think that's been a little bit of the fear with Josh Mulligan, is he an out-and-out right wing back? Is he an out-and-out winger? Is he an out-and-out centre mids? Is he an out-and-out number 10? And he's been used in all those different places. I think within this team, the best place for him is right wing back, because he will run all day. He doesn't shirk from the defensive work either. His end product's a little bit up and down, but that's sort of fine. You sort of expect that from your wide players a little bit. So I think that balances it out. And it also means that if he's there, then we can play Jordan McGee either at... We could play him anywhere else, and Jordan McGee plays absolutely everywhere.
Well, that's what I was going to say. That was my next one, John McGee. So is he just at this point in his career just the jack of all trades who, wherever you put him, he does a job?
And he does a terrific job. He scored, I think that was his 4th or 5th league goal for us this season. Incredible, given that he was out for about a month after the League Cup quarter-final. And as I say, he played in that sort of base in the midfield along with Mo Silla, but he is probably the most important player for Dundee. I think I saw a stat earlier today that of games that he has played more than 45 minutes of, we've only lost to Aberdeen and Rangers was the League Cup quarter-final game. He is just so vital because we've got such a young team, such an inexperienced team, that if he's not playing in it, the average age drops massively. And he's not even that old. He's 27, 28, I think. So he's much younger than you actually think he is, because he came through Hearts at a really young age.
Well, he was 16 when he scored his first goal for us, and that was 2013. So yeah, he would be 27, about 27, yeah.
And he would be the first. He would be my priority for getting a contract extension. He's out of contract along with actually most of the squad at the end of the season. But yeah, he can play right back. He can play centre half. He can play centre mid. He can play right wing. But he can play anywhere.
Gary, are you sure that you would definitely give him a new contract over the man I was going to ask you about next, Lyle Cameron?
That's a good point. I'm just assuming that Lyle Cameron's gone, to be honest, because this was the first game since Luke McCowan left where he looked like Lyle Cameron of old, to be honest. And I think it was because he was played, because McGee and Silla were doing the dirty work, for want of a better phrase, that allowed Cameron to just be at the tip of that diamond, sort of diamondish, you know what I mean, the tip of that structure. And to
triangle.
Yeah, triangle, and to sort of influence play a little bit more than he had been doing. And yeah, he just looked back to his normal self. And you could argue, well, of course it's going to be easy doing that against 10 men at the bottom of the table, but sometimes it can be more difficult to do that. But I'd say if he's coming back on form, and given that he's only 21, 22 himself anyway, so he's going to go through peaks and troughs, and he's been through his trough now. So hopefully the injury to Larkesh, as much as it was an absolute body blow at the time, it maybe suggests that we've found, through necessity, found another system that works. I mean, Finlay Robertson came through as a number 6, but he played left wing back during pre-season, and he's basically the only option we've got, other than Reapers and Jordan McGee probably, at left wing back. And he was fine. I don't know how it would feel when he's up against, say, Celtic or Rangers, but then he did actually play that role at Celtic Park earlier in the season as well. So we'll just have to see how that goes, because Larkesh is out until January, February time. He's out a little while, so yeah, we'll just see how it goes. But it was a valuable 3 points because we've got a little bit of a tough run coming up. And I was a little bit nervous that if we did lose to Hibs, then we're right back in the bottom mix.
So the final Dundee player to focus on before we'll chat a bit of the Youan controversy, Seb Palmer-Holden. So he's going to be the first of 3 players on this podcast, I believe. Certainly 2, probably 3. There will be somebody, I'm just forgetting them now, but hopefully they're in my notes. Who, it's like the Shack Bean. It's like, sorry, I was doing you a disservice. I wasn't familiar with your game. So when he first played at the start of the season, I didn't really think much of him. He looked like he was kind of like a big guy, but he didn't have like a great goal record, and he didn't look particularly threatening to me in the kind of final third. And then he kind of dropped at the team for a bit, and I was like, yeah, I don't really see much from him, especially when you've got the kind of Murray and Main potential combination up there. However, I've been coming around more in recent weeks, and for what I saw of the game on Saturday, I was watching it in a pub, but for what I saw, he looked excellent.
Yeah, he's an odd one because he came in on loan from Bristol City, who are in the Championship down south, and their fans were actually a bit annoyed that he'd gone out on loan because they felt like he should be playing for them. And Dundee were a little bit below English Championship level, probably. So it seemed like a real coup at the time. Obviously, he scored it was a scrappy goal, but it's still a goal in a derby on his league debut. So it went well. But then I think the difficulty's been that he was shunted out to the right-hand side for some time, just when we were playing that 4-3-3. And that's the thing, because we've gone through a few different formations, a couple of players have suffered as a result of that. Like Scott Tiffany, for example, who's been really good whenever he's played this season, doesn't really fit when we play wing-backs. He can obviously play that way, but it's much more likely that he'll come on as an impact sub later on, because defensive work isn't really the sort of the hallmark of his game. And I think Seb Parma-Holden was a little bit of a square peg in a round hole, being put in that more in sort of the right wing position. But when you actually play him through the middle, he is very, very difficult to play against. He's quite rangy, sort of like an orangutan, is the best way to, even though Simon Murray's got the orangutan hair colouring, Seb Parma-Holden's got that. And I think that, Curtis Main hasn't played. He has not started a lot of games for us. I did think that there would be more of a sort of a Bash Brothers combo with him and Simon Murray, but maybe Murray and Parma-Holden are the more complementary pairing, and Curtis Main can just come off the bench to score against hapless goalies and hapless defences, just to add a wee bit of polish at the end. But he's someone who he appeared on one of the Dundee fan podcasts, and clearly is actually really enjoying his time in Dundee. And I think that a big thing really for Tony Docherty is, if he's finding young players to bring on loan from down south, is finding players who will settle in quite quickly. And he seems to have done that actually with the vast majority of the loan signings, which is a little bit unusual. So hopefully this is the end of a bad spell.
So as I said, before we move on, we spent quite a lot on one game, but I saw that we've not had Gary on the main podcast in a while, and it's always fun to talk about how shite Hibs are.
Absolutely.
But before we do move on and kind of finishing on Hibs, the Elie Youan controversy. So for those who didn't see it, after Abita went into Silla and Silla was on the ground, Youan started playing keepy-uppies. Now, this was picked up by Michael Stewart on commentary and also really criticised by Marvin Bartley. It was either at half-time or was it full-time? I can't remember. I don't know which of the two.
I'm not sure at which point he was shown the clip and he lost his mind.
Yeah, he was very... There was a lot of criticism for it. Gary, I get the feeling you're of the opinion that this is a whole lot of nothing. I kind of think... I think it's a pretty stupid thing for Youan to do. So let me get this out of the way first. There is undoubtedly, when it's come to Youan across this year, because first of all it started with the kind of he's like a lazy attacker, he doesn't defend, which isn't true at all. Youan does track back. Not very good, like a lot of attackers. When he goes back, he's not particularly great. He can get his heat up his arse sometimes and not know where his position and where the danger's coming from. But he certainly does run back. He's not somebody that he doesn't just kind of jog back, or he doesn't just stand at the top of the field waiting for the next attack to start. So that stuff was unfair. Now, there is this kind of undercurrent of race that goes along with his criticism. At the same time, I mean, I thought when I was watching the clip, I thought I was going to see him just do a wee bit of keepy-uppies, and then that was it. But it keeps going on and keeps going on. And it's when he starts to balance it on his head. I mean, I was away at that point. I was pissing myself. I was like, what are you doing? It's like, it goes on for so long that I think that is when you start to, does it say anything about what Youan thinks of where Hibs are on the table? Does it say anything about his teammates? Does it say anything about anything like that? No, probably not. I mean, a lot of people will attach it to stuff like that, saying, look, he doesn't care at all. From what I've kind of heard of Elie Youan, the man who apparently sleeps all the time, I just think he's somebody that basically has his sees in the clouds a lot of the time. So I don't think it really kind of occurred to him that it might not be. But at the same time, it's just not a good look. Your team's bottom of the table. You've had a good start to this game, which you've actually played a part in, because he done well for that opening goal. Mm-hmm. But you just don't do something like that. Don't do anything out of the ordinary. You have to be solemn, you have to be focused, and that's it until your team starts to win football games. Then you can do daft stuff like this and people will just be like, oh yeah, that's fun. But no, it's purely an optics thing. Does it actually mean anything? Not really. But we're at the position that Hibs are in, you just don't do it. Just don't do anything.
I think the problem is that Youan is damned if he does, damned if he doesn't. I don't mean that people would be saying, I can't believe he wasn't doing keepy-uppies to keep warm if he hadn't been doing them. But I feel like, I mean, if you watch back the full game, Michael Stewart was obsessed with Youan, and not in a good way. He was criticising him even when what was happening had nothing to do whatsoever with Elie Youan. And there is just, and you sometimes get this with players, like at Dundee, I can think of Martin Woods, the season that Dundee went down, came in for a lot of deserved stick, but then there was also quite a lot of it where he just became the lightning rod for everything that was going on with the club at that time.
That is definitely becoming the case with Youan. He's getting singled out far too much because he's not playing well, but I mean, Jesus Christ.
No one
Take your pick for that Hibs team.
Yeah, and I think that the point's been made, I think Duncan's made it on X, that, it seems as if Youan's been getting a lot more stick and a lot more attention for doing that, probably to keep warm, and probably, as you say, in his own head anyway, than Obita was for the tackle in the first place, which was as nailed on a red card as you will see. Like, it wasn't malicious or anything, but it was just stupid.
No, it was a definite red.
I was cackling at that because I was like, brilliant, you've let us back into the game. Cheers, Jordan. And you've also probably just got David Gray the sack. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but certainly in a couple of days' time.
Oh no, I was very thankful as well. Like, it was like, the first, I missed the start of it. I just walked to the pub and it was like 3 minutes in. I was like, for fuck's sake, they're a goal up already. And I was like, oh God, we're going to be bottom of the league tonight. Thankfully not.
God bless Jordan Obita. But no, I do feel a bit for Elie Youan because I feel like he probably should have gone in the summer, and Hibs should have. I can't remember, was it this summer or when was it they got some sort of fabled massive bid for him that they turned down?
I don't think that was actually true though.
Yeah, probably not. But I feel like he's stuck around. I'm not saying that as if it's his fault, but he is still there, and the Hibs Daz have decided that he is what is wrong with the club and not the entire sort of culture and direction and signing policy and decision on who to appoint as manager and sticking by said manager when it was clear that everything's going to pieces anyway. But never mind, Hibs. There's always next week.
And let's move on to our next game. This took place on Saturday. This was a match that kicked off at 4 o'clock, I think I'm right in saying, or 4:45?
4, I think.
4. Regardless, whenever it kicked off, it finished St Mirren 2, Aberdeen 1. St Mirren took the scoring midway through the first half. 20 minutes in. Toyosi Olasanya opened the scoring, but Aberdeen tied it up 5 minutes at the second period to Jamie McGrath. But the Dons would not go and then get another victory in the Scottish Premiership. Instead, they suffered their first defeat of the league season with Richard Taylor heading in the winner. Gary, I've got a bit to say on this, particularly from a St Mirren point of view. There was a couple of players that stood out for me. But what stood out to you from this game?
2 things. One is, or actually 3 things. First of all, I think there's now a blueprint for how to beat Aberdeen, and it's get your keeper to launch a ball over the head of Gavin Malloy because he does not know what to do. That's several games now where I've seen that, a long, not even hopeful ball, just a long ball going over his head, and he just does not have a clue what he's supposed to do, how he's supposed to track back, how he's supposed to clear it, what he's supposed to do with the striker, anything like that. So yeah, just punt it long to defeat Aberdeen. So that's number 1. Number 2 is that watching it back, it's strange because I actually had all the hallmarks of Aberdeen shit-festing their way to a win, because even things like, their equaliser, Nisbet totally miskicked and it fell, it fell perfectly for Duke for Jamie McGrath to equalise. And that's the sort of thing that happens, when your luck's in, your luck's in. So there was that too. And also just for me, the biggest thing was not that it mattered in the end, but that was a perfectly good challenge by Alex Gogic. I didn't even think it was a foul. I know he went flying at sort of knee height, but he got the ball. And the fact that Beaton steamed in, showing the red straight away, just absolutely baffled me. I mean, when I saw it at first, Gogic was sent off, but then it was reduced to a yellow after VAR intervention. I was picturing all sorts because it's Alex Gogic, but then I watched it and I thought, that's totally fine.
He leaves his feet and he lunges, and he leaves his feet and he lunges, and it's some of the angles do look like he does catch Morris, but we're going to guess that he doesn't, because you can tell right away Morris is not injured. If he caught Morris, Morris would be in a lot of pain.
Yes,
because he did go in at high speed. He went in high. He left the ground. He's going with a kind of straight leg. It's all the hallmarks of a red card. So I can see why they gave it right away, because I think they thought that Morris had been fouled and had been hurt by it. But that, you're right in what you're saying, and Beaton could have come and steaming over. Like, that's a situation where a ref, and refs love to do this. I think they often do it because they are doing it to diffuse a situation.
Mm-hmm.
When loads of players converge after a bad tackle and the referee's over right away with the red card, right, okay, I've dealt with it, he's off, We don't have to get into a fighting match here in the middle of the park. So that's usually good refereeing to defuse the situation. But they maybe just get too used to doing it and expect a reaction, because there was no reaction here. Because Morris himself was just like, okay, I'm just going to get the ball to take our throw in. And instead, Gogic is being sent off. And I think I'd kind of taken a second to kind of see the whole picture. You would have realised that, he's gone in there. I would say Gogic has still been reckless. And I think it's close enough. It certainly is close enough to Morris that I would say I would still merit a foul, even though he does play the ball. It's just the way that the manner he goes in, reckless. There's possibility of endangering opponent if you do make contact with him. I think a foul is fair enough, and I would also say I think a booking is fair enough. But yeah, you're right, because Morris doesn't appear to be touched by it, then it's not a red card, and ultimately they came to the right decision.
Yeah, which is the main thing, I suppose. But no, as I say, it was an unusual game, and I'm sure as well that St Mirren fans are delighted that they actually did go down and clear the pitch, because I think it was probably the game that was, along with the one in Perth, was the one that was most at risk of not going ahead due to the conditions. And you could see at the side of the pitch just how much they'd managed to pile up on the sides. But no, they managed to get the game on, and yeah, did they deserve all 3 points? I don't know, but it's the sort of result that I'm sure St Mirren fans will look at and think that might actually help us sort of turn the season from what seemed to be not even petering out, but actually beginning to fall apart a little bit just with what's happened off the pitch, into something that is still very much salvageable.
Well, that's the last 5 games now. They've only lost one of them away to Rangers. They were poor against County, but in the other 3 games they've been, well, even in the Rangers game as well, they were quite impressive. So I've one defeat in their last 5. They played well in that defeat, and they've only had one bad game in that period as well. And what stood out to me, again, I thought the centre midfield duo of Calvin Phillips and Mark O'Hara worked very well together. I talked about previously on this podcast how I think that fits St Mirren's 3-4-3 system very nicely. Speaking of the 3-4-3, St Mirren look a lot more like themselves since Greg Kilty and Conor McMenamin came back into the side. They are 2 guys who put in a lot of running, but also have a bit of, especially Kilty, have a bit of attacking quality as well, that they can make them that more solid. So these guys, they're the 2 number 10s, and they are 2 number 10s. So neither of them play as like wide players, really. But it means they can come back and help the midfield and really kind of make St Mirren a bit more robust and hard to play through. And that teaming with Phillips and O'Hara, especially, I thought was excellent in this game. Really, really kind of helps him out there. But one player I'd like to highlight, which I don't think I've ever done on the podcast before, because he's very much a kind of 5, 6 out of 10 player. Probably 6 out of 10, if 5 maybe a bit harsh. 6 out of 10 every week. Elvis Bomono. He's fine enough as an attacker. He's fine enough as a defender. But he's never really somebody that stands out at all. But I thought he was very good in this one. He struggled a little bit with Duke in the first 15 minutes after half-time. But other than that, he was defensively solid. It's probably the best I've seen him play, certainly, in terms of getting forward to offer another option. He should have got an assist when he popped up in what was basically the number 9 position to play the extra pass for Conor McMenamin. McMenamin really should have scored there. Mm-hmm. But all game, he was getting down and offering an option and being providing a lot more thrust to the attack than I think I've ever seen from him. He's not going to be Sean Rooney, but...
God, I'm sure St Mirren are hoping he's not going to turn out to be like Sean Rooney.
On the park, he's not going to be Sean Rooney. But I think if he can replicate this type of performance where you don't have to necessarily do a whole lot more, just be that more proactive, be that more confident in your ability to make an impact on the game, and that will give them a bit more balance and really help them, and help them not miss Rooney as much on the field. Right, is there anything else to say about... I have a couple of things to say about Aberdeen before we move on.
Yeah, go for it.
I think St Mirren deserve a lot of credit. Like, they did a great job of keeping Aberdeen in front of them for the most part. There was something with Aberdeen that I don't know if I've seen much before, which was there was loads of touches for Graham Shinnie, like dropping in between the 2 centre-halves. And Shinnie in general seemed to get a bit of time on the ball in that area, like the defensive midfield, like deep-lying playmaker role. That's not Shinnie's game. Like, that's never been Shinnie's game. Like, yeah, he's got the experience now that he's fine in possession and he's not going to let you down. He had some misplaced passes, but generally he was finding Aberdeen players with it. But he's not somebody that's going to cut you open with a pass. He's not going to play like a raking 40-yarder that's going to land on the feet of an attacker. Well, if he does, it's not going to happen very often. I just didn't think that was necessarily that conducive to them winning. And even in the opening period, where it wasn't quite happening as much, I still kind of wondered about what Aberdeen had apart from like one kind of route. And the route in the first half was McGrath cutting in from the left and then playing the kind of reverse through ball for Morris on the other side. And that was dangerous. Morris had a very good first half, was continually going, the Gogic red card incident or yellow card incident, whatever you want to call it, being a good example of that. He was continually finding space, getting St Mirren on the back foot, and he was the player that was getting in behind them and causing them problems. But once they started to deal with that a bit better, there was really nothing in the second period other than, I say, those first 50 minutes when Duke was introduced. He played on the left, McGrath went inside, and him and Jack McKenzie initially were really going at them. You could see it with McKenzie's run. You could see it as well with another incident where Duke got in behind. I think it might have been for the goal. But quite quickly, that kind of receded. Duke didn't really, other than nearly backheeling the ball into the back of the net late on, he didn't really do an awful lot. And there was just a lot of Aberdeen players that I thought were off it. Nielsen had one of his poorer performances. Clarkson had a couple of moments in the first half, but I felt himself was having to drop too deep to try and get involved. Sokler had one of those games where he couldn't hold up and couldn't continue to bounce off him. And even though Nisbet got the assist for the goal, technically, as you say, it was a miss-hit, and he looked just kind of how Nisbet has for the most part since he came back up. He doesn't look quite like the player he was at Hibs.
Yeah, and I think the interesting thing looking at Aberdeen is their next three games. I think they've got Hibs away, Hearts away, and then Celtic, which in any other season would be three very difficult games. It's going to be at least one difficult game, maybe two. But it's getting to the point in the season where, will Jimmy Tilleen have to, really ring the changes and mix things around a little bit, and how will that actually impact on Aberdeen? Is that something you actually maybe could have done a little bit more of against St Mirren just to keep things fresh? But
I think he did, to be fair. I mean, Keskinen came out of the team. We put Duke back on the bench. I'm trying to think. Yeah, no, well, he dropped Palaversa because Nielsen was available again. But there was a little bit of rotating going on. And Morris came in to start. Morris hasn't started many games, so there was a bit of rotating. Maybe that's the issue, though.
Yeah.
Kind of threw them off their game a bit. Right, let's move on. Let's move on to the game in the Highlands, and that was Ross County 2, Motherwell 1. Motherwell telling their fans... right? Motherwell telling their fans before kick-off that they shouldn't travel because of the conditions of getting up to Dingwall. They maybe should have done it more than 3.5 hours before kick-off, because it takes about 3.5 hours to get from Motherwell to Dingwall, and a lot of supporters probably would have already set off by that point if they were going up. But for those that did make it, they saw their side defeated 2-1 with goals from Ronan Hale and Josh Nisbet. Not long after that, both of them coming within 10 minutes of the second period. Zach Robinson got one back late on, but Motherwell, quite frankly, got what they deserved out of this one. Gary, I'm going to guess that you asked a Motherwell supporting mutual friend of ours for what happened in this one.
Whatever makes you think that. Yeah, Graham told me what happened.
Right, well, in that case, let's start with the winners then. Let's start with the winners. And I'll tell you about Ross County, because I watched about 65, 70 minutes of this one, enough to see them go 2 goals ahead. Josh Nisbet got man of the match at the ground. I can certainly see why. I'd maybe disagree and pick somebody else, but I can certainly see why, because, well, that's an incredible strike for the goal, isn't it?
Mm.
You really don't often see players... Well, you often see players disguise shots. You don't often see players disguise shots when they're, like, hitting it from outside the area. And you can tell that he means it as well.
And the thing is, when I first watched, I thought it took a massive, wicked deflection at first. I said, oh, no, he actually hit the ball like that. Oh, okay. No, it was a terrific hit. Shapes
to basically curl it, like, around the kind of defenders, and then at the He's basically just about the centre of goal, but he's kind of edging more and he's moving more to the right. So you're expecting most players in that situation, kind of wrap your foot around it, try and bend it around, get it inside the post. Instead, he just kind of places it with his instep. It's a tricky thing to do because he has to kind of cut back across his body with his leg to do it. But just perfect. Finds the inside of the far corner, hitting off the post and going in. Superb.
No, it was terrific. But for me, just looking at County, I think that, their home form, especially if they're playing sort of beyond the wall for half the season, that seems to be the case, behind their big wall of ice. I think they're fourth or fifth in terms of home form this season, and they've only got 3 points from, I think it's 6 away games this season, and they are clearly, and it's fair enough, going to do it. It's what Killie did for years. They are just going to sustain Premiership survival on the basis of the fact that no one can go up to the wall and win. Nobody, even Celtic, when they went up, really struggled to do it, and it's going to be in no small part down to them really. It's not fair to say winning a watch with Rowan Hale, but just identifying that they could bring in this guy from, was it Cliftonville, and he has taken like a duck to water to Scottish football. He's not needed any settling in time. He has just immediately come in and replaced Simon Murray without even blinking.
Well, let me praise two other summer recruits. So I will continue with my praise of Nisbet. 5'3", he's listed it. Not ideal for a centre midfielder in Scottish football, you would normally say, but the man has a lot of heart in the fight. He reminds me a little bit of Jason Holt in that he's got that tenacity despite being like quite small. Now Nisbet's a bit more, slightly more stockier than Holt. Holt's obviously like very kind of thin. Holt's taller though. Holt must be about 5'7" or 5'8". So he's got a bit of height on him, but it's that kind of way. It's just that it's the tenacity. Is he going to shove many players off the ball? Not really, but because he's got a kind of low centre of gravity, he doesn't really get shoved off much himself. He's got quite good like snake hips. He can turn away, and he's got a good kind of sense for danger. He can turn away from it when it's coming, and that means that he doesn't get into many situations where he's going, shoulder to shoulder with opposing players. And he's just really good at picking up loose balls in the middle of the park. He's got a bit of attacking play in him. Obviously scored an outstanding goal. And there was a good through ball he played for Hale as well in the first period. I don't think that's a huge part of his game, at least not at this level. I haven't seen him a few times this year. He is more of a neat and tidy type than he is the creative type. But he certainly seems, despite his height, he seems like he's fitting in well to that County midfield. However, I was going to say who I thought was man of the match. And that was, again, Noah Chovers. So I continue to big this guy up. I know that County fans can be frustrated by him. I can certainly see why. But the guy is just fearless. He just continues to try and make things happen in the final third. Doesn't always come off. But especially that low down the Scottish Premiership food chain. I can imagine if he went to like a Hibs, Hearts or Aberdeen and he would be chased out of town within a couple of weeks. Because he would try too much and just give the ball away constantly. And then the fans would get on his back and then he would maybe go into his shell. He's got more freedom at County to just keep trying things. And therefore, when he does give it away or when he makes a bad pass, or like there was a couple of crosses in this one that were like terrible, like floated right into the goalkeeper's arms. But the first goal comes from him just trying something, just deciding, right, I'm going to have a shot here. Like he's about 25 yards out. A lot of other players would go, right, no, I'm going to make another pass and keep possession or whatever. He's like, no, I'm having a strike. It's deflected, lands in Hale's path, and they score. And that's what can happen when you've got the confidence just to put the ball into the penalty or put the ball into areas or have a shot at goal. Things like that can happen. And even the second, yeah, obviously it's all credit to Nisbet, but they win the corner in the first place from Chilvers doing something. And even saw it in the highlights for the first half, the first kind of a real chance either team had, that was just all him by himself. And so, yeah, I'm just a huge, huge fan of him, and I really enjoy seeing him play, especially because he's not my player, because when he does something bad, it's not as frustrating.
And I think County were probably helped by Motherwell just having not an all-timer stinking game, but certainly Graham was not very impressed with them. And I think that one of the issues is that of recent weeks, Motherwell have maybe not depended on, but everything good has has flowed through a blend of Lennon Miller being on fire and Maswinise's sort of blistering pace. And Maswinise's just come back from international duty with Zimbabwe. So he was benched to begin with and only came on for Andy Halliday after an hour. And that just, I think, made Motherwell a little bit turgid, if for want of a better phrase, a little bit lethargic. And I think the other issue was that Lennon Miller just was fairly anonymous. Obviously, he put in the cross for Motherwell's goal, which then waited was about 4.5 minutes for VAR to say it was all right. They then got 10 minutes of injury time and did absolutely nothing in those 10 minutes of injury time to try and rescue something from the game. But I think this is hopefully, in Motherwell's case, just a case of a game where nothing went right, and you maybe just hope that you've sort of bundled all of your mistakes and everyone has a stinker at the same time, and it just gets out of the system for the next time. And they're probably all just wishing that they hadn't bothered going up the A9 the night before and could have just said, "Oh no, sorry, bus is stuck outside Kingussie. We won't make it, lads. Let's rearrange for a Tuesday in January," as every Ross County game should be. So no, basically, but no, I don't think there's too much to analyse from a Motherwell point of view other than just that it was...
I think that really stood it for me was the change of formation. He changed it to essentially a 4-4-2. I mean, you'd probably more likely call it 4-4-1-1. But it's Ap Stam playing up front by himself. He clearly seems to be like a hard, like an industrious, but more of a kind of penalty box kind of guy. That's kind of what he was sold to Motherwell anyway. And yeah, because he's not fast and he's not big. So I don't know what else he would be, to be honest. But he seems to be like isolated a lot of time. But this game, they're playing alongside Tom Sparrow, who's a midfielder. And I've only really become aware of Sparrow a bit recently because he missed a lot of the kind of start of the season. But I don't think he's necessarily a bad player. I don't think he's good enough to play up front. And the weird thing about it is that Motherwell got loads of forwards. Like, I know none of them are any good, but like, why do you have so many if they're all shit?
The thing for me with the Motherwell forwards is they all feel like, it feels like you would only put all of them on for the last 10-15 minutes. Do you know what I mean? Like there's none of them that I look at and think you are this, I don't necessarily mean that in terms of quality, just in terms of their sort of their style and their qualities. I mean, obviously Zach Robinson was on loan at Dundee for a couple of seasons, and I feel as if each of the Motherwell forwards is maybe like 70 to 80% of what you would want from a starting Premiership forward, but none of them are 100%. So I'm not exactly sure what solution they come to. I think that, perhaps if, next week when Maswinise is back, it will all work a little bit better again, but I don't think Kettlewell quite got the approach right up in Dingwall.
No. Right, so let's move on to our fourth match, and that was the one that took place at Ibrox, with Rangers dropping points yet again, drawing 1 each with Dundee United at home. Another Ibrox stinker from Philippe Clement's side. Philippe Clement, there was rumours that he was going to be away on Sunday evening, but that proved not to be the case. He remains for the time being, quite why I have little idea, because they are honking. But we'll go to United first of all. Gary, safe to say you didn't see United being this good at this point in the season?
I'm not very happy, Craig. They're a spawny bunch of... Anyway, no. They did what I feel is always the best thing to do to Rangers, which is to wind them up on administrative and procedural points before a game, because they just cannot cope with it and they get all flustered. Because obviously, United, the kickoff was delayed due to United's coach taking a little bit of time to get to Glasgow, taking a little bit longer than they thought it would. But ultimately, United came to Ibrox and frustrated Rangers. And I think there's two players one of whom has definitely been spoken about quite a lot, especially by Tony, and deservedly so, and that was Sam Dalby, who I think is probably, a lot of people said Will Ferry was their signing of the season. I think it's Dalby, because of...
He's got 5 goals in his last 6 games.
Yeah, he's on fire. He is someone who I think when he came in, everyone thought, he'll just, he'll be the guy that comes on for Molt, but obviously Molt's had a couple of injury concerns lately, but he has definitely shown his value to United. And at the other end, I think Jack Walton had a terrific game at Ibrox. He made several crucial saves. He didn't put a foot wrong, and I think that if you're going to get anything out of Rangers, you've got to have things firing for you at both ends of the pitch. And that's, unfortunately for me, what Dundee United had. But their time will come, Greg. There will come a time when everything falls apart for them. I remain utterly convinced of it, and my men's mental health depends on it. So don't you dare try and convince me otherwise that they're going to end up finishing fourth, because it's not a situation that I want to contemplate, really.
Yeah, you were really happy at the start.
Very well done to them. Very well done.
You were really happy at the start of the season when I predicted that United would finish ahead of Dundee, and so far I have been correct. So that's going to be quite funny if it remains the case from now until the conclusion.
We don't usually find Hearts fans happy to end the league before May, especially after 2020, but there we go. Okay, that's interesting.
I don't want us to end it now. I can't be asked for a playoff. A playoff against Livingston to keep our top flight survival, although that would put Hibs down. Actually, do you know what? Bring on Livy. We'll beat them and Hibs can go down. I
don't want Joel crying at the Tony Macaroni. No, well, actually, maybe I do. It would be quite funny.
Even I would laugh at that.
That's the last thing anyone wants. But no.
But anyway, well Dundee United.
Yes.
So yeah, the things that stood out for this, when Dalby have talked about, the game plan was very clear. Dalby by some distance had the most aerial duels of any player in the Scottish top flight this last weekend, over 20. So they were knocking it long to him and playing from there. Dalby, he's big. He's got good mobility about him. He's quite quick. And he's not been much of a goal scorer in his career, but he's certainly found his scoring touch in the last 6 games.
Helped when Rangers defenders just don't bother trying to pick him up.
Yeah, that certainly helps. He's not great with, his touch is still a bit kind of awkward at times, but he's one of those ones that, because of his mobility and his size, he just kind of throws himself about, and that awkwardness just makes it difficult for the Rangers defenders to knock it back up the park clearly, and so then the ball just rolls loose, and then United can then pick it up. And also, as you mentioned, Jack Walton, a couple of brilliant saves. The one from close range in particular. And he's somebody that I think had a bit of doubts coming into this season, because I knew he was good in the Championship, but I did wonder whether United fans were thinking, not really taking the step up as seriously. Because I thought he was good in the Championship without being great. And you need to be great in the Championship to be decent in the Premiership. But so far this campaign, he's not really done anything wrong as far as I can remember, and this was a big performance. But going to Rangers, so I'll get the positives out of the way first, because this is the second in my shack. I'm sorry, I wasn't familiar with your game. Vaclav Cerny. So I said in the combined Rangers Aberdeen 11 podcast that I did with Tony on the Patreon, which went up on Friday night, I believe. Yeah, Friday night. That I didn't really rate Cerny, and I hadn't liked what I looked from him so far. And I even said that he appeared a bit mentally weak to me. Like some of the games, not really taking it by the scruff of the neck. And even matches, and I said the Hearts game as an example of this, in a game where Rangers were in the ascendancy, and you're looking for players like him to drive that home. After the first 50 minutes, he kind of disappeared, and I've not been impressed with him in some other matches I've seen. That being said, I think he is generally picking up recently, because he was good against Motherwell in the League Cup semi-final. He had a couple of good games in Europe. Olympiacos won. I didn't see it, but I've been told that he was very good there. And by far and away, Rangers' best player in this one. Saying he was not weak mentally was probably unfair, because he really was the man who, with obviously Ibrox is grumbling around him, Rangers find themselves a goal down again at home this season. But he's the one constantly demanding the ball, taking it, going at County. He scored, and it was an excellent goal. But he also had an expected assist tally of I think it was 1.3 or even maybe 1.5. By far and away, statistically, the most creative player in the league this weekend. And that just goes to show the problems that Rangers have. He put in this great performance, a really, really good performance. And yet Rangers, again, only score 1 goal. And it's wild because they've got 17 in 12 games so far this season, but they scored 6 in one match against County. Without that, it's a goal a game. That's mad.
And I think if you told me at the start of the season that there would be any point at which I would be looking at St Johnstone versus Rangers in Perth and thinking, well, you never know, see what Alakara's men could do it, I would have said, no, there's not a chance I will ever think that. But they are just, as you say, it's, sort of if you take what you were saying about, was Cerny mentally weak, if you just look at the rest of the team, like they do not have, I don't really like talking in these sort of nebulous concepts, but they just don't have that winners mentality. They just look like they're just an incredibly meh team.
They might, they also might just not have good enough players. Right, let me go through the rest of their attacking players from the weekend. So Diamande, I'm still a fan overall, but he's a number 8, he's not a number 10, and he's struggling in that position. This was a really poor performance for him. And seeing as the midfield seems to have better balance when Barron and Raskin are the partnership further back, I think he's going to drop out of the team now, or at the very least he should. Bajrami, again, I think there is a lot there. There's clearly talent there. He's not really been known as a left midfielder. He's having to play it there because they don't have any other options really due to injury. I think he's typically a number 10, but the more I'm seeing him, again, somebody else I've been impressed with in Europe, but in the Scottish games, I'm wondering whether he's got the kind of physical qualities to shine in this one. He looked tired in this game. Dessers was his usual. Jeff Day, he can't defend, but they need him in the team because he's because him coming over the overlap gives them a slightly different dimension to their attack, and without him in it, if they went just defensive first at left back, I mean, they'd be even worse going forward, so it doesn't really solve any problems. Sterling, just don't think he has the quality on the ball to be a Rangers right back. He get too much space in that position. I think he has got his uses, but I think he needs to be playing at kind of the top end of the field where he can just basically kind of charge about, or to be playing in the centre again where he can just charge about and do the kind of jack of all trades thing when he's got time to think about it and you're expecting him to cross or to provide a moment of creativity for the attack. He's not good enough. Danilo was brighter off the bench, fits the system better, makes Rangers better team. Never seems to stay fit. And Hadji, he should be playing as well, but fuck knows what's going on there. Oh, and Robin Proper still looks like he's in the wrong movie.
Yeah, it's, I think whoever it is that comes in eventually to replace Philippe Clement, similar to what we were saying at the very start of the show about Hibs, but obviously in a very different dimension than Hibs, there's so many issues sort of written through the club like a stick of rock. And that the squad that they've got, a very expensively assembled squad as well. It's not as if this squad's been assembled on the cheap. Compared to, I mean, if you take out what Celtic paid for Ida and Engels, Celtic and Rangers have probably spent a similar-ish amount over the last couple of years. And look at Celtic squad, look at Rangers squad.
Yeah. Right. Let's move on to our penultimate game, which was a match at Tynecastle, the late kick-off on Saturday evening. And despite a spirited and quite good first-half performance, it ultimately ended up Hearts 1, Celtic 4. Goals from Furuhashi, Kuhn, and then Adam Ida got a double. Sandwich in between those two goals was a very good strike from Musa Draman with his first goal, I believe, for Hearts. But ultimately, another defeat for the hosts, another win for the champions, and now sole league leaders of the Scottish Premiership. I mean, Gary, from Hearts' point of view, there's not really much to say other than it was very much the same old story. They had their chances where the game was in the balance, didn't take them, but at the same time, other than maybe Blair Spittle's opportunity, there was a clearer cut chance later on, but Blair Spittle's opportunity early on in that first period, there wasn't really many chances where it was like, oh, they should definitely be scoring that.
Shanklin could have at least tested Schmeichel.
Aye, a bit more, but I don't think there was any.
It's not a big deal.
There wasn't really any opportunities in that first half. You're like, oh, he really needs to score there, other than maybe the Spittle one. But even then, you can see why he doesn't score. Like he's having to take it at an awkward angle. He can maybe take a touch, but quite often, especially with a player of his general technique, you would say take it early to take the goalie by surprise and see what you can do. If you take a touch, there's a defender already close to him, so I think he does the right thing there. He just doesn't get his technique right. And Hearts were quite impressive. They were in terms of pressing Celtic, they forced them wide all the time, didn't let them build their attack through the centre of the park. James Penrice was terrific in that first half, constantly on the overlap. He's been Hearts' best player this season. But they get to half-time, they're not going ahead. Celtic make the adjustments, and then ultimately win the game quite easily.
Yeah, and that's why it's even though it was a 4-1 victory, that's why it's the penultimate game, because there's only so many times that we can find different formulations to say either it was an easy victory for them, or Brendan Rodgers tweaked it and used the 5 subs that he has to bring on several £1 million worth of talent to pummel you into submission, because that's just what they're going to do every week, and it gets a bit dull. And from my point of view, I'm just a wee bit annoyed that Luke McCowan didn't come on. Because that would give me something to be very interested in, and
if
see
I was
whether or
Luke
not
McCowan, I'd be a bit annoyed, because Arnie Engels is not playing well.
No, and I get that Arnie Engels cost 10 million and Luke McCowan cost 1 million, and that Luke McCowan grew up a Celtic fan, and I'm guessing Arnie Engels was not wearing the hoops as a boy growing up in Belgium, but nevertheless, I think on merit, you would argue that Luke McCowan deserves at least a little bit of a run in the team, particularly with Europe, still very much being a consideration for Celtic. In my head, I thought, well, McCowan's been signed to start games at the weekend so that Arnie Engels is not playing 90 minutes, he's not playing like 150 minutes a week or something like that. But Brendan knows best, it seems. Definitely seems that way. They're top, and they're never going to lose a game this season.
I thought there was a bit of a odd admission from Rodgers after the game, in which he said that Hearts surprised him. He was complimentary about Hearts, but he said the Hearts surprised him because he thought they were going to go for a press in a 4-4-2 rather than a 4-3-3. Now, Hearts have played a 4-4-2 exclusively domestically under Neil Critchley since he's come in as manager. But they played 4-3-3 against Heidenheim at Tynecastle. And if I was Rodgers, I would have maybe thought, they'll probably do that against us, because that's the kind of step up in level. Yeah. And that's what really kind of hindered Celtic in the first half, was that, like I say, Hearts kind of let their centre-halves have the ball, but what they did was they stuck Benny Beningame really high on Callum McGregor and didn't allow him to turn. So then they were kind of funneling the ball wide, and then they were funneling it to Taylor on one side and Johnson on the other. And as soon as they got the ball, whoever the Hearts winger was on that side, Forrest on one side, I believe, and Spit on the other, they were right in their faces right away and making it very hard for Celtic to just move up the field. Rodgers tweaked it at half-time by bringing Hatate further back and kind of sitting alongside McGregor more so that they had an option. They also just played a lot higher as well, and that just meant a bit more, stretched the game a bit more, stretched the field a bit more, made it a bit more difficult for Hearts press to just be as effective. So Rodgers did what he did eventually, and he's obviously, the best manager in this league. But it took him a while. I was surprised that he thought we were going to play a 4-4-2. I don't know, maybe it's just he thinks Hearts at Tynecastle against Celtic will go for the jugular, but no, I wasn't surprised when I saw us playing only one up front. Anyway, let's get to our final game.
Yeah, which was actually sort of interesting from a narrative point of view, at least.
It's certainly interesting from a narrative point of view, not so much from a football point of view, but it finished St Johnstone 1, Kilmarnock 0. The only goal of the game scored by Mackenzie Kirk. And that's the final player. Sorry, I wasn't familiar with your game, so I'm going to have to go all the way back to the summer for this one, when Hearts fans were losing their tiny little minds about Hearts releasing Mackenzie Kirk, or allowing him to join St Johnstone. St Johnstone came in for him. Hearts were like, yeah, he can go. We're basically not going to play you. And Hearts fans were saying, oh, this is absolutely ridiculous. Like, he scored all the goals and we're just giving him up for nothing. And I was like, can everybody settle the fuck down? He scored all these goals in the 5th tier of Scottish football. You wouldn't be clamouring to sign somebody for the 5th tier of Scottish football if they were wearing any other shirt while they were doing it. And also, he went Hamilton Accies in the second half of last season, a team that were promoted, one of the better teams in the division from League One. And he barely kicked his arse. And so I was like, right, everybody's being ridiculous. I was even close to writing something about it. Like, fans need to kind of take a bit more sense of perspective here. I think it was a mistake for Hearts to let go of Mackenzie Kirk.
And I bet you're glad you didn't write that now.
Yes.
Yeah, it's St Johnstone's. Obviously they only scored the once, but St Johnstone's transition over the last, but I mean, it's not just since Vaclav Cerny came in, to be fair. I think, Levine with, some of the signs he made identified this too, but St Johnstone actually looking vaguely exciting or competent or like they could do stuff other than just be incredibly stodgy and dull is a little bit of a revelation. And Mackenzie Kirk is looking like he's going to be potentially a key part of that for St Johnstone. But I think another key man picked out by Eric Nicholson from the Courier was Sven Sprangler, who wasn't really getting a lot of game time towards the end of Levine's tenure at St Johnstone, but
Levine's tenure in general, he was, Saints fans were often quite flummoxed by the fact that Levine never really seemed to rate him, and they kind of thought he's one of our best players.
Yeah, I don't know why, but it makes me think of when Mr. Burns runs the baseball team and he keeps yelling at Daryl Strawberry to shave those sideburns.
No, it's not Strawberry. It's
Don Mattingly.
Yes.
Yeah. So maybe Sven Sprangler just wasn't shaving the sideburns for Craig Levine. Who knows? But no, this St Johnstone side, look interesting. There was a couple of different things going on. Dre Wright was brought into midfield as a little bit of a tweak towards the end of the game as well, which I think just helped to settle things a little bit too. Obviously, you picked up on Mackenzie Kirk as well, and the wonderfully named Bozo in defence.
This is the player I wanted to talk about, and this is the narrative, because this is a potential game changer for St Johnstone. And that may seem a bit over the top, but we know St Johnstone this year. We know them certainly under Vaclav Cerny, where they're a lot more attacking side. St Johnstone, in terms of personnel, the defence is not good. It's not really a good Premiership standard from centre back to goalkeeper. They do have a good left back in Andre Raymond, but that and to get further your point about Sprangler, they do have a decent defensive midfielder, but at centre half especially, that they are poor. And so Vaclav Cerny's made his first signing. He's got this creation, Bozo, Mikulic, and they're desperate for him to be good. And he was good. It's only his debut. But even the desperation is shown in the fact that Vaclav Cerny played him in this game. Despite the fact he was only fit enough to play 76 minutes. You don't often see that. But a manager will play a centre half who's not fit enough to last the entire 90. But Vaclav Cerny went with him for this one, went with that decision, and it was the right one. He handled Marley Watkins and Kyle Vassell very well, which, not flawless, but good defenders more accustomed to the Scottish Premiership have done a worse job against they two in the recent past. And there's another key thing as well with St Johnstone. This guy's 6'6". And it's something I didn't actually think about coming in, but should have been a concern. Like, if he's 6'6", is he just like one of these guys that wins the ball and he's crap on the ground?
Mm-hmm.
Because Vaclav Cerny wants his team to pass the ball through the lines. And he has a lot of it like defenders taking the goal kicks and passing it to the goalie and starting the attack from there. However, again, he looked pretty decent on the ball, like, and once more, not brilliant, but competent enough, poised enough, and that's just what they need. If he could be a defender, if he could just be a defender that improves their defensive unit, fits into the team, that's huge for St Johnstone, because we know that they have talent going forward. It's just always seemed like the defence was going to get them relegated. And if Mikulic could play well, and Jack Sanders, to be fair to him, is having a better season than I think anybody expected of him, other than maybe an optimistic St Johnstone fan when he first signed for them. So the pieces are now starting to fit together. We're thinking St Johnstone, I mean, they were obviously out of the relegation battle already, but due to their defence, I think we still looked at them as being maybe them and County being the most likely teams to go down if Hibs and Hearts get their act together. But now, if they're sorting out the biggest weakness the second biggest weakness, I would still say goalkeepers are biggest weakness, but the second biggest weakness in their team, then that is, as I say, a potential game changer.
And just two other little facts about St Johnstone. They faced 14 corners, and I don't think Kilmarnock really threatened from any single one of them. And I don't know if that's just because they had Big Bozo in the middle, just absolutely shelling the ball away.
He wasn't winning absolutely everything, so it was just maybe a combination of St Johnstone defending better as a team, and Killie it kind of feels like they've just not quite got that They're threat for set pieces, and there's no reason why it shouldn't. They've got most of the same players, but it seems diminished this campaign.
Mm-hmm. And the final St John's fact before we turn to a lacklustre Kilmarnock is that was their first headed goal of the season.
Great header for Kirk.
I don't really know what to do with that information, but it's just very interesting. It's taken them until November, end of November, to score a header. But yeah, great cross, great header, great goal. And yeah, they ended up winning, aided a little bit by the latest in Kilmarnock's quest to rack up more red cards than any team in the history of humanity.
Yeah, it's the Killie commentators went rage about this one, but I don't know, it looked like a second yellow to me.
Yeah, and if you're already on a yellow, why on earth are you leading with your foot to challenge for a 50-50? Don't.
It's very strange. Killie having a weird season. I still kind of think they're going to be fine in terms of like they're not going to be sucked in any relegation battle, and they might even still make the top six. But really disappointing considering they kept that nucleus together, and Europe obviously threw them off. But you would have thought they would recover better by now.
I am going to be brave because Craig Anderson keeps even more receipts than I do, and he will definitely throw this back in my face when they secure their top six berth in March. But I don't care. I am picking Kilmarnock as the other team to struggle along with Hibs. I have not been impressed with them at any point. The victory that they had at Dens was the result of Dundee just absolutely imploding in the way that Hibs would implode at Dens, which actually benefited Dundee just this week. But a lot is made of the fact that Killie haven't played they've played 5 games at home, but they still have the worst home record. Okay, they beat Rangers. Whoop-de-doo, they beat this Rangers side. Fantastic. Have a medal. But they've only managed to draw with Hibs. They only managed to draw with St Johnstone pre this version of St Johnstone at home as well. They've had indiscipline it's now just gone beyond sort of an early season quirk, and it's become a factor of this Kilmarnock side. Matty Kennedy didn't play, and I think Craig Anderson said he was on media duties the day before, so that suggests that it was something that was picked up beforehand. So who knows how long he's out for. He would be obviously a pretty big loss for them. I think what will be key, and it's a little bit away yet, so by this point my big, bold, brave prediction might have already totally fallen apart, but they've got St Mirren, Ross County and Motherwell at home in the space of 6 days after New Year, one after the other. And that, I think that is going to be key to Kilmarnock's season, just those 3 games alone, because if Kilmarnock want to be a top 6 side, they should be beating St Mirren, Ross County and Motherwell at home. And it's 6 days in January. They do not need to leave Ayrshire.
And that'll be 9 points and you looking like a fanny.
Or I look like Nostradamus. Craig, I look like a fanny anyway. I might as well have it on record and have Craig Anderson clipping this out later on and saying, see, that stupid Dundonian idiot. But no, I am yet to be convinced by this Kilmarnock side. And I think if you go through the league, it is annoying to me that St Johnstone and Ross County seem to have got themselves together, because they were the 2 sides, as you say, that everybody had sort of picked at the start of the season, and they may well regress because we're about to hit a very congested fixture list. There's going to be suspensions, there's going to be injuries, there's going to be a lot of issues for a lot of teams. But it feels to me as if, Hibs have the stench, but I'm smelling something on Kilmarnock, and it doesn't smell good, Craig.
Okay, that'll do us. Thank you very much, Gary, for joining me this evening.
Sorry for the sniffing.
Yeah, that was disconcerting. And thank you to everybody for listening and your continued support of the podcast. If you'd like to hear more from us, the best way to do so is to sign up to the Patreon, patreon.com/Terrace Podcast. I think we had 6 bonus shows going up last week. There will be, hopefully, fingers crossed, without any cancellations, 5 more going up this week. And there's just so much good content there for you all to feast on. And it's not just me talking about the Premiership with you. If you subscribe, it feels like I've been doing every Monday show now. Need a week off soon.
I did enjoy that.
Not as much for me, just for the fucking listeners, so they've got somebody else giving a different opinion.
I mean, I've been enjoying the lower league stuff because obviously it's been a mild pleasure not having to really pay attention to the lower leagues as much for the last couple of seasons. And I really enjoyed the tier episode that Sean and Craig did, putting different lower league managers into different tiers depending on their abilities. And I think it's a pretty good primer for anyone wondering what's been going on in the lower leagues. So can highly recommend.
Thank you, Gary, for helping with that plug. And once again, thank you to everyone for listening. We'll talk to you again soon. Goodbye.